Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Good to see your faces. How are we? We got Tony and Scott. And I don't know. Lots of good people in the audience. Harold Mark. We have staff. We're missing at least one more for the members of the board so we can launch. Is that right? Tony, there's another Tony now.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You have to use last names or something.
Yeah. I'm actually very used to using last names, except for Scotty. Dossett, I should learn. But like Grady, Rice, Dossett, DS. Well, just don't want confusing. We'll figure it out.
Well, as we would say back home, Ricardo, I don't care what you call me, just don't call me late for dinner.
We didn't have that one, but I like it. Okay. Yeah. Day because we have Tony, you're a lawyer during the day.
What's that? I didn't hear you, Ricardo. Ricardo has some thumbs up at the audio.
Ricardo, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Oh. I'm fine. I think I'm.
Now we can hear you, but not distinctly.
It's really muffled.
Not getting anything now.
I don't know. Oh. How's this now, Tony?
Better.
Much-
Better.
Much
All right.
better.
All right. Once again, the man comes through.
Jason to the rescue.
Jason to the rescue. All right. He gave me another camera with a mic, but we're only using the mic from it, so it works. Listen, guys, we have someone missing here. We have at least one more confirmed with Tony. And Tony Rice is working on, I don't know how far he got on his training. So he was an if, but
I believe Katrina had a conflict tonight.
okay, so let me get Daryl because we have a lot of people attending too, which we want to hear.
Well, I think we'll move forward regardless of the quorum, right? I mean, I don't see anything that we're going to have to vote on tonight.
It's true. It's true, and the recording is official, and so they can catch up. We won't be able to approve minutes and do those kind of votes, but we are in good enough space that we should be able to just keep on moving. So let me shoot Daryl a text just to make sure. That's unusual. We have been late before, but not this off. Okay. Text sent. So let's call this meeting to order and then move on everything that we can. And we'll just skip the ones that require quorum. So thank you very much, Tamara, for doing a roll call.
Tony Allegretti,
Present.
Ricardo Diaz,
Present.
Scott Dossett,
Here,
Katrina Kendall, Daryl Price, and Tony Rice.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. As we move to approval of the agenda, I guess as a header, I just want to say I've been thinking a lot about all the people that aren't here. We've lucky to live in a very active and very good county as far as COVID, but it's just hitting me from all sides. How many people have not made it through? So I just want to say I'm sorry for everyone that's been affected so harshly. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Tony, thank you. And a vote.
Tony Allegretti,
Yes.
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes,
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
thank you. So we're officially opened with an approved agenda by everyone. As far as agendas, we had been having just meeting the requirement to publish before. We've been announcing our topics and announcing as much as we can beforehand, but we're, thanks to Lamont, moving forward on getting it out earlier. So just make sure that when you have something for the agenda, you put it up, send it in, and we'll have a chance to approve it, a week before or something, just to make sure that everybody gets a chance. We don't want cut out, especially because of our previous, what turned into habit. We'll skip number 3 because of not having quorum yet. And we'll go to number 4, public participation. Today's meeting is very much a listening session, and we want to focus that as to possible changes to the ordinance. And so this is the space where other items should come up so that we can keep lining them up for our regular meetings. One further thing before we go on to the people who have raised their hand. And that is, we are using the regular meetings to advance the general work of the CPRB. And we have a list of hearings that are happening and that you see announced on the agenda. Those, while there is an open portion to open the hearings and close them, it's really meant to focus our items to those cases as much as possible, and having these regular meetings monthly to advance the greater work, which in this case is a listening session. Any other entries? Okay, so we have 3 people raising their hand. We'll just go in the way they line up. First Christopher Hansen, then Tracy Chong, and then Sarah Nixon. Go ahead, Christopher.
Hi, Mr. Diaz, can you hear me okay?
We got you.
So I guess first of all, I want to point out that this listening session thing was very poorly announced, and it doesn't seem as though there was any outreach to the community. And maybe there was and I missed it, but a couple of days ago, I checked the Urbana City Facebook page. I checked the Urbana Police Department Facebook page. I checked the mayor's Facebook page, and this hadn't been posted anywhere. I couldn't really see any other than the calendar entry that the city made, which, by the way, until a couple of days ago, the calendar entry just said listening sessions meeting, January 27th, no explanation. I mean, you guys got your agenda up, maybe a couple of days ago, but the point is, this is more poorly advertised to the public than the previous listening sessions held by the Urbana Police Department, which, by the way, were not very well attended. The youth police listening session a month or 2 ago had 0 attendees. And so I don't quite understand why we're not making the public super aware of these events. Clearly the public has an interest, but there's really little outreach that's being done. I sure hope when you get to and my understanding is there's going to be a time to speak during the listening session. And so this is public input for just general issues, but I sure hope during the listening session, no one on this board and no one from the city plans to mute any residents from the city. I hope you're not restricting speech in any way. I'm sure you guys, if you watched the listening sessions previously, Lamont Peppers muted a resident for criticizing the police chief and for drawing criticisms on the arrest of Alea Lewis. I don't know why we'd want to actively mute residents who have concerns about policing, but I sure hope Mr. Peppers doesn't have control of the mute button, because that's just wrong. Don't do it. So, and by the way, we need to eventually talk about some staffing issues that the police have. It doesn't bring me any comfort that Mr. Peppers is, childhood friends with Chief Anthony Cobb, and seems to have a lot of police connections. Anyways, I wanted to talk about the appeals hearing that we had a couple weeks ago. There were some procedural issues raised during that hearing by the appellant. Mr. Ricardo Diaz said he was compelled to rule negatively against the appellant because of the raising of those procedural questions. That's one of the most prejudicial things I've ever heard in any type of even quasi-judicial setting, which is just plainly wrong. And I gave Mr. Diaz the chance to retract that comment, and he wouldn't. Mr. Dossett said that he would refuse to listen to any new evidence or arguments in the appeals process, but didn't have an answer explaining why we even bother with the appeals. I mean, if you're not going to listen to the appellant, why would you even hold the hearing? And most disappointing of all, the hearing officer, who's supposed to be overseeing these sessions, didn't raise a single word about issues of procedure, about issues of prejudicial statements made in that hearing. So it's just a huge failure, and no reasonable person would want to go through this process. I mean, to go through the obstacles and the contempt that are received when you make a complaint against the police, and then to deal with a police review board that is entirely chummy with the police department, it's no fun, and it's stressful, and it just doesn't result in anything good. And so I wonder what we're doing here. And by the way, and I've said this over and over, this board in its 13-year history has never shown any indication that they're capable of identifying police misconduct. Never. That taser incident you guys kind of reviewed, there was clear violations of police policy in there. You guys didn't see it and you let it go by. Apparently we're not going to actually see that video again. You said we were, but it's just never coming up again. So you've never given any indication to the public that you're actually capable of identifying misconduct. And so I want you to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Tracy Chung.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong from Urbana. I've spoke at nearly all of your recent meetings, so you guys should be pretty familiar with all the issues I've continuously brought up. But tonight, I'm going to bring up an incident that left me, when I heard about it, feeling rather uneasy. I'm very concerned that that during the CPRB appeals hearing on January 15th, that CPRB Chair Ricardo Diaz told the appellant before the hearing even started that he was going to rule against the appellant because he was frustrated that the appellant was questioning the procedure of that night's hearing. CPRB's past history of not following its own mandate and recent demonstrations of an inability to find police officer wrongdoing, even when there's evidence, have already made me distrust this board. However, for an appellant to be prejudged and to go into an appeals hearing where the board members are biased against the appellant and outright say so brings my distrust to a whole new level. What's the point of this board? What's the point of the listening session you're going to hold? What's the point of all the time spent on filing a police complaint? What's the point of the appeal process if board members can be so biased as to tell an appellant that he was going to be ruled against even before the hearing had begun? I cannot tell you how disappointed I am that such things even happen. Finally, during the last police listening session, Lamont Peppers, he actually cut me off for mentioning Chief Seraphin's name while discussing how Aaliyah Lewis was attacked by Urbana police officers. He also issued a very harsh statement that essentially was preemptive censorship and most likely scared away many people who wanted to speak. So I hope that for tonight's listening session, your board is sincere in listening and accepting all comments, even though they are difficult to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, Sarah Nixon, and then Eldris Melinda Carr, and then Grace Wilkin.
Hello, CPRB board. I want to let you know that with regard to this evening's listening session, I too had to dig and dig and dig in order to find out about it, in order to find out what it was, in order to locate any information, any documentation about this scheduled session. I too came across just a super cryptic entry in the calendar that referred to, it just said listening session. And I guess the fact that it just seemed so odd and mysterious is what caught my eye, and I clicked on it. But how would I ever have known that this was, first of all, the CPRB, and secondly, of the caliber of importance that it actually is? So I'd like to bring that to your attention. And, you know, I tend to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But, you know, we've been hearing so much over the past year in terms of concerns and even complaints being brought forward to the effect of city administration, city administrative staff apparently, perhaps in some ways thwarting, you know, the effectiveness of the CPRB. And as I said, I do tend to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I think everyone involved is surely sincerely working to improve the functionality of the board. Yet when we see something like that, like listening session buried in the calendar, it really does raise flags. How is the public to become aware of this event? And I'm grateful that Mr. Hanson raised the issue himself. And as he pointed out, apparently there was nothing circulated in terms of outreach and advertising on social media and or, you know, in any other meaningful way. So that really is very discouraging, because a citizen or civilian police review board listening session is something that could result in such a valuable wealth of information and feedback that you could receive from so many people in the community who are voiceless, traditionally voiceless, and yet who have insights, have stories, have suggestions, have information that you as members of this board could really use to good effect. It would be wonderful to see you redo this and in fact, create a series of CPRB listening sessions and really reach out assertively and aggressively into the community, liaison with first followers, with other organizations that work directly with people who have had criminal justice system experiences and who may be able to provide thoughtful and helpful perspectives. And finally, just from the firsthand accounts that we're hearing from appellants who are going through or have been through the CPRB appeals process, as much as I understand and validate that it's a frustrating process for you guys, and you may even have the personal viewpoint that appellants are bringing frivolous or trivial cases in front of you. I think the important thing to remember is there's procedure and process to follow. And what we're hearing is eroding or further eroding trust from the community. It's destroying the trust that is so vital to have for a functional civilian police review board to work. So please keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace Wilkin, welcome also. Grace Wilkin, Ms. Wilkin. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have much to add from the previous speakers, but I'll back up. My name is Grace Wilkin. I'm an Urbana resident, and I don't have much to add to the previous speakers. Just wanted to call and speak in support of what they've already said and hope that you're listening and taking all of this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkin. Melinda Carr.
I was kind of waiting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Eldridge Melinda Carr. Good evening. I was trying to wait to see if anyone else had any comments. One question was the information for the Civilian Review Board, the comments that were submitted. Did the comments that were submitted from the use of force that related to the review board, were they included in this? That's one question, because some of the comments that, or some of the information from the use of force, I know some of those that we submitted, meaning the Minnesota Alliance, related to the review board. So I didn't know if that was included in this review and you added information from that. And as I looked at, I kind of was able to skim a little bit, but I didn't get to review it thoroughly. One of the things was the disciplinary process. And my question for that is, I was looking at Champagne's, and I was just going to read from there. Section 2537C, the subcommittee may request chair of the Human Relations Commission issue a subpoena for citizen witness testimony or for records of the subcommittee has been unable to obtain this information voluntarily. The request for a subpoena must state why the testimony is required and the attempts made to obtain the information voluntarily. This section does not apply to police officers, which I think is the same as for Urbana. And then there's a section dealing with discipline, as F, pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement, only the police chief and the city manager are empowered to impose disciplines for Champaign. So my question for Urbana is what, when I looked at for Urbana, I was saying that the city, so who is the city including? I know it says the chief. I think I read the chief only can impose discipline. So what part does a mayor play in this process? Let me look here right quick. I know I don't have enough time, a lot of time. It was on the website, the complaint review process. So what happens after the CPRB makes its determination? So number 3 says the mayor will have final authority in the matter. And then under other important questions, does CPRB have any authority over the police officer discipline? And it says no, only the chief of police has authority over the discipline of Urbana police officers. So that's not clear to me. So that's one important question I had, and maybe you can answer that. Someone can answer that. I have some other things. I don't have time. Maybe I can submit some of the questions I had. And so if they weren't included in the, use of force, then maybe that's something that can be added. The outreach, and I think that was just talked about. We need a survey. I mentioned in there, an annual survey, reaching out to the community to get that input so that can see what people are feeling, the feedback, so it's more widely distributed and received, more two-way communication. So the community outreach piece should be, I think, dealt with a little bit more globally.
Thank you.
Time is over. Thank you.
Thank you. That 5 minutes is over, but tonight's late listening session is precisely to keep on adding to what it is to our understanding of what we see. I'm going to go through a couple of these comments because they are a frame for tonight. Listening sessions, as we announced, might have been October. We decided to take the proposal that had been sent. I'm sorry, it's not called the proposal. I'll double check in just a minute. Suggestions that had been sent to both City Council and to us as what needs to be changed in light of our context of policing in general. We decided to do it as listening sessions because we find that sometimes the set forth agenda that we have does not allow for dialogue, and therefore a listening session gives us more freedom. Every meeting is required to have a public input line, and therefore we hold to that, not only out of obedience, but because it's useful to hear the public. And as you know, we have generally tried to do public participation more than once, because in a regular meeting, there isn't very much of a back and forth. So this is number 2 of listening sessions. The first one was on what we could do within the ordinance. Today's objective is to see and bring up what can be done to change the ordinance and take those suggestions. And the third one is structural suggestions. That will be coming up, not at the next one, but hopefully at the one after that. It is a bona fide attempt to gather ideas. I must caution everyone, we are not the one that makes the law. And therefore, the suggestions that we put forward and as we collate, and then as we are able, we send them. We will be sending them to City Council. Many of you have been commenting, as Ms. Carr rightly pointed out. There have been other opportunities to make comments that certainly overlap with our intent today. But for us, as board members, we want to have as direct as possible this kind of situation. Given COVID, I would think that, meetings at churches and meetings in other places would be an even more appropriate place. So that's part of the context for today, but I don't want to, I need to answer at least a couple of the comments that were made. As you know, hearings are closed sessions. That is for us members of the board, whatever we see and hear there it is not our intention to put in public because we are bound to keep that session confidential. It is for protection of those involved, not only of the appellant, but also for the city employees involved. I have to tell you that therefore what is treated there and heard by the members of this board, it is our intention for it not to be discussed in public for that reason. On the other hand, comments made, so not everything that you hear is true or can be on the record counterbalanced. I have to tell you that when it comes to mentioning other staff or other board members, they have their own, as employees, obligation to answer or not answer. As a volunteer on this board, while I have obligations, I have no qualms about saying what I think respectfully, not only to appellants, but to city people, city employees. And I'm sorry, there is, I do not feel animosity towards appellants or towards city staff in any way. My intention is to make this a fair process as much as possible, whether that, some people may disagree as to whether this is fair enough, but it is our sincere attempt as board members to carry out a fair process and unbiased. I am, and I will continue to be firm when it comes to what I consider out of order, whether it's attacks or not procedural questions. I will do my best to interpret, but there is no intention to discount anyone's opinion, whether it be a city employee or another kind of resident, because in the end, most of us are residents of Urbana. So having said that, I am mollified that we would attack another person rather than the work that they, or the issues at hand. Because ultimately, if we're going to make the process better, it is by working with individuals and pointing out where we have inconsistencies, and we have many, but we will try to improve them. So having said that, then I want to move on to those portions of the meeting that will focus on us to what is tonight's intention, which is as we listened and as we have tried to make the changes within the ordinance, we have done a few changes and hope to do more. And today's intention is to look at the ordinance, think of what hearings and what other observations we have had to say, these are the ones that make sense for us in Urbana. The national scene got so nasty a year ago, rightfully, because of the actions of police and eventually people on the streets, that it was hard to hear and hard to interpret what has been happening in Urbana. So today's session, listening session, to me is a dialogue, and it is a listening session in that, yes, we are taking notes to collate, but it is an opportunity to come to agreements, or at least to voice people's thoughts about these things. So I think that the best way to do, we did not agree on listening session rules and expansion of them. So I'd like to, because of the format, and darn it, we have to have some kind of sequencing. I hope to be able to answer and to take notes for clarification of what people are intending when they are putting a proposal of what can be changed in the ordinance. Again, while it's not in our power to do so, it is our power to recommend, just as it is in our power to agree, disagree with what the city is doing and issue recommendations when it comes to a particular person's case. But in this case, we want to keep it to the structure and what you've seen in the ordinance. So Scott, especially since you're the most experienced person in the room when it comes to watching others and participating in listening sessions, anything that I'm missing? I want to pull up the ordinance because it'll be quoted, or at least there will be references made to it.
I just unmuted Tim because I would like us to do 5 before we start the listening session. Get reports from staff on those items.
Thank you. So we will do that. Thank you. But you say take 5 as a break?
No. Do 5.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Get a report on status of complaints and appeals and of the annual report. That's a particular interest of mine. So
yes, so you are correct. I was skipping over to number 6. It's when we planned this was our intention was to have it as a listening session. We do have some business and it informs everybody. So why don't you go ahead? Can you do B while I pull up A?
I can, if you like, Ricardo, I have the numbers up. I can just do
Okay.
it real quick.
Thank you, because I was going to go to the portal in which we see them too. So go ahead, Karen.
So the numbers, the final numbers for 2020, they were unchanged since the last time we reported them, but the totals were 92 complaints for 2020, no complaints yet for 2021, 64 appeals for 2020, no appeals yet for 2021, and we have had a total of 5 appeals heard so far that we were able to complete. We are so that's the status. The annual report. Scott and I got together and talked about modeling what Elizabeth Hannon had done and inserting the hard work that he did. Doing the additional research to fill in the gap years between the 2013 report and the work that Elizabeth had done for 2019. And so I'm expecting that we can largely deliver a draft report to you that mirrors the structure of the 2011, 2012, 2013 reports, and have a draft pass back and forth over the next month. And so you'll have a relatively complete draft by your next regular meeting time. I have a few writing assignments I need to give to people, and you all need to decide if you want your photographs in the report or not. The last thing, even though it's not an item on number 5, is I would just say I can't speak to in terms of some of the commentary that people have made about how this listening session was advertised. The item has been on the front page, our landing page for the city's website for about a month. I checked right before the meeting started; it's still there. So anybody who would look at the landing page would see that in the sort of the hot items. And then we also included that in the monthly e-newsletter that went out. I think you all are aware of the fact that we sent a flyer to each of you to circulate to your contact lists. We circulated it to various contact lists, including the folks that we had invited to the 10 shared principles and so forth. So it may not have hit social media. I don't use social media, so I'm not aware. But it's not that it was only advertised on the city's calendar. It actually got pretty wide play. So I just wanted people to be aware of that, even though they might not have seen it in that format. I think many people did.
Carol, thank you for clarifying that. As far as Scott and I are on social media and we put it out.
Okay.
both as a picture and as a reference to it. But for me, information flow is always a problem. Most of the local governments will do their website, and it's hard unless individuals pass it on. And so ideally, we would all be friends even within Facebook so that we could notify each other. It is our attempt to put it on the agenda so that those present here can keep pushing things out, and therefore our agenda today also has a couple of points that people should be putting out as much as possible. It is in our interest to reach more people. So thank you for clarifying that. I want to hand over to Scott. You also, you've been working on the annual report. We started out as an annual report, and now as you've worked on it, you want to give me some reason? Finish my sentence, please. Read my mind.
Well, actually, I was just going to comment on what you and Kurt were talking about. Depending on which meeting you reference, the people that are waiting to participate, and I'd accent on waiting to participate, is between 3 and 5 times the number that we typically get during public input sessions. So no matter how the invitation went out, I think sort of proves the point that we got a little bit of a further reach. In terms of the annual reports, I think the format that Todd Rent started is good. When we met about this and sort of looked at the data that I'd taken out of the hard copy files or summarized from them, I just hope that we can get something that will allow us to show the community all of the work that's been put into the board that we sometimes don't, or the citizen might not see vis-a-vis the way that each complaint is processed through the system with quite a bit of rigor. So hopefully our reports will be able to accent that.
Thank you. And yes, it's been dragged down for a while, but better to get it right than to just rush out in reactive mode without validating and making sure that what we publish is good. Thank you. So that takes care of item 5. So we're going to go into then the listening session, and I would like to then take individual comments as we have previously. I want to make sure that this is open. Its intention is dialogue. And so putting out some thoughts and then wanting to comment is something that you may want to do on somebody else's recommendation. Right now we have three people with their hands raised to participate. I want to put forward that because we are looking at an ordinance that we must abide by, but we did not write ourselves. There have been so many times when we say, oh, flag that one as an ordinance change. It doesn't mean we'll get them all through, but what we want to make sure is that we have considered all of them and then to form a cohesive package. I'm gonna share a document that we have been floating internally, which is the one that was suggested by a group of residents. And I believe it was you, Tony, that went through and added several comments on it, but I'm not going to show your comments. I just want to show everyone that there are plenty of suggestions already before us. And as we hear them, some of them reiterated, there's no harm in that, but I would like for us to get a target of 7:30 to finish. With the amount of people we have, we're very flexible. On the other hand, this is not the final time we consider. Jason, sharing. Oh, here it is, share screen. Are you all seeing a Word doc? Maybe not.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. I need the feedback just because of the system sometimes. as you know, it gives me. So our accumulation then has been of various comments, and the categorization has been through and through of the ones that were sent. I'd like to keep it open, so if anybody else has more comments, as Ms. Carr said earlier, the use of force, there is an implementation part that does overlap with us, and so I welcome comments on that too. And also just sending in whatever thoughts had more developed, because these kind of things tend to, at least for me, they tend to simmer for a little bit before I can actually make a recommendation. So no more ado. Minnie Pearson, Melinda Carr, Sarah Nixon, on the topic of where's the ordinance and what can we do? Minnie, Ms. Pearson.
Yes, Carol pretty much answered. This is Minnie Pearson, NAACP Champaign County branch. Carol kind of answered my question. And the other question I had is from a concerned citizen here in town, and they wanted to know, and you don't have to answer it now because I realize this is a listening session and we will be talking about the use of force and that policy, but is there a police directory? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that on somebody's hopper to look it up. I have personally used I'm in City Hall. I always go to the picture ones because there are many officers that I haven't never met. And so I have not used the directory, but it's because I am here frequently enough that I can check things, but somebody can answer that question a little bit later. Ms. Carr, you want to come back to the topic that you were left in the middle of or something else? You're muted. I don't know if, there you are.
I'm sorry, you were asking.
Yes, you've got your hand raised to contribute to what change of the ordinances are on your list.
I didn't have my hand raised, but you're asking me what changes related to what I spoke to earlier, or is this a
Yeah.
different?
I guess I'm asking you to see if there's any other changes in the ordinance that you'd like to see that you haven't mentioned before.
I would like to have the reserved, the time to review it because like I said, I have not reviewed it thoroughly because I've been working on other things. But the things that I did mention, for example, was the outreach, and I think there was some comments earlier reaching out to others to make sure that we covered people who may have input. Because I participated, for example, in the Hillard Hines group sessions, and there was a police interaction survey that only pertained to those who were in that group, and that should have definitely been a community-wide type of input. And I did indicate that in the survey that I answered. So the community outreach piece that's in your document should be with the mayor. That should be extended to the community so you can get the proper information because the police department impacts the entire Urbana community. So the input is needed from anyone who would want to comment. And we know that from past experience, there is a fear of reprisal. So sometimes this information may need to be in the form of focus groups so that the information is gotten to see what things are happening. And sometimes it may be anonymously done. So in order to get that information and to be done in a coordinated effort, I think there needs to be more done on the side of the outreach. And I'll just mention that one thing.
Thank you.
This is very important.
Thank you very much. The survey. as we do it as a listening session, there are times at which we'll have something to say, so maybe we'll save them, and then maybe members of the board can comment on, every so often. So let's do Sarah Nixon next, and then Tracy Chong, and then we'll take an opportunity for members of the board to comment, because there's a lot of good things going on right now that are going to match what your suggestions are. But go ahead, Ms. Nixon.
Okay. Hello, CPRB board. This is actually going to be very difficult for me, as I and my daughter are survivors of Urbana Police Department misconduct, and I struggle with fear of reprisal that is very real and legitimate, given what I have been through, what my experiences have been with law enforcement. I customarily attend the meetings of the CPRB in my capacity as a member of the Observer Corps for the League of Women Voters of Champaign County. But when I saw that you were holding a listening session, again, as I mentioned, I discovered that just by digging, because I saw that rather mysterious entry in the calendar. When I discovered that, I realized that I really do need to step forward at this point and speak. Exercise my First Amendment to speak, right to speak about issues that are of public importance in a public listening session to a public body. So I would like to just preface quickly and briefly by saying this. I don't see any presences on the CPRB here tonight that help me feel like I will be heard and understood as a woman who has experienced severe partner abuse, followed by severe re-victimization by members of law enforcement and of relevance here, the Urbana Police Department. So there is no female listening presence in the seats of power today. And from the perspective of people like myself who have been harmed or traumatized, or both, by the Urbana Police Department, you are very real gatekeepers to the process of justice. Lest I run out of time before mentioning this, I would like to address a point that you provided as an example of input that you've received so far. So the first example on one of your documents says time limits for submitting complaints should be eliminated. And I'm aware that you've provided an incredible multi-page document filled with, it's a compendium of feedback received. And I think that document is super impressive. I'm really grateful and impressed that you've put that together. It shows that you're listening. I want to, as I said, just respond to that very first suggestion and support it wholeheartedly and let you know that at the time that I and my little girl were going through what we were put through by Urbana Police Department individuals, I had no awareness of any possible sort of recourse, any possible avenue to bring to the attention of anybody that things were that there was wrongdoing. I actually looked on the website. So I'm talking about 2015 and 2014 and found nothing. I reached out to a lawyer that that was representing us at family court. And that lawyer told me, no, there's really no recourse. And it seemed to me that there ought to be some mechanism to file a complaint. So I want you to know that, that was not in place back in 2015 when I attempted to try to do something. And escalating events and escalating trauma since then have precluded entirely the possibility of me coming forward and bringing my story forward and even conceiving of the possibility of a complaint. So when I see the idea that, well, when I learned, first of all, that there is a complaints process, and I see the idea being brought forth that the time limit should be eliminated, I want to support that and let you know that when victims are dealing with trauma and with intimidation and or ongoing legal entanglements and or incarceration, a time limit to be imposed on their ability to speak up to a body like you effectively means that there's going to be zero recourse. It's just completely off limits, out of reach. I'm assuming that my time is up, so I will have to stop here. Thank you.
It is. I mean, those 5 minutes are up, but I want to come back to a couple of the points you made. We'll go one more person and then we'll open for comment, response. Ms. Chong.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong from Urbana. I just wanted to quickly answer Minnie Pearson's question about if there is a Urbana Police Department directory. There actually is an Urbana Police Department civilian resource site that has the Urbana Police Department directory, which includes UPD command staff, officers, and administrative staff. And this site is at urbanapolice.com. So urbanapolice.com. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tony, Scott, comments yet on what we've heard, and it allows for other people to step up if they want to share comments.
Just towards Ms. Nixon, I'm sorry to hear about what you described to us today. As far as the comment regarding the lack of female presence on CPRB, we do have a female member on the board. Her name is Katrina Kindle. She's just not present this evening, and there is a spot open on the board. So it's open to anyone who would like to serve. And I do agree that it would be a more balanced board. I think would aid the board. But we don't. At least I'm one of the newer members, and I know that keeping a full board has been a difficulty in the past. But there isn't any sort of the board hasn't been picked, to my knowledge, in a way to limit female representation. And I'm hearing what you're saying, that we need more females on the board, and I fully support that. Just to clarify also, Ms. Nixon, the document that we received, the petition that was submitted to us, we did not generate that. Just to clarify that.
Yeah, we reordered some of those, but you can basically say that most of the lines were written by concerned citizens. I will do. Thank you, Tony. Scott?
Just a quick comment. I certainly appreciated the concern about time limits, and it's something that we've talked about very early on in the board and occasionally touch. And so that was really good feedback to get. Of course, the kind of the creative tension here is constraints upon document retention, the memory of humans to accurately describe an event that they took part of. And so I hope that that's something that, we can work on as we work through this revision of the ordinance.
Scott, let me interrupt you for a second. You are referring to the time for filing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the 45-day window, basically.
And the suggestion that it be eliminated, and your comment is...
I'm actually not at this time in favor of eliminating any time limit. But I think we can talk about what a time limit is. I mean, already, and kind of in a little bit of a response to our guest, anything that's happening that is in a civilian or criminal review, we can't handle anyway, given the the ordinance. But as soon as that case would clear any kind of judicial procedure, then that could be filed. So basically that time limit then stretches. It also stretches in the event that the complainant is physically unable to actually present the complaint within 45 days. And so we should look at that language as we go forward. I can't think of any other way to characterize it right now, but with induced trauma in mind. And it may very well be that a complaint, that is based on such horrific events as we've kind of had hinted by Ms. Nixon, there might be a mental as well as physical sort of opt-out for that 45-day window, because I can certainly appreciate the fact that someone could be in such a state of stress that they just couldn't respond and look up the resources. Now, since 2015, I think we've reformatted the way that complaints can be submitted, and certainly in the last year, with lots of staff help, we've been able to make some changes to the way the website looks to make those easier for people. But that certainly doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at what the long, the outer limits of a complaint should be, and with the intent maybe of expanding those. So. I think that's all I had. I did appreciate Ms. Carr's comments about outreach. It's something that we've tried to do better here, and certainly appreciate that feedback.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's true. To translate a little bit of that, Scott, because you're very much into it. It is 45 days, but that clock stops on certain circumstances. But if somebody wants to file a complaint, what we'd really like to do is make sure that it's a fair opportunity to hear the full case. And that means that all evidence should be kept. So when, I see it as an education moment too, when somebody has a complaint, they should at least start the process, so that I went through our most frequent contact with police is through the vice assistant deputy, or what's I don't know his official term, but deputy chief Searles. And this, I learned this when we were starting to do tasers and recordings. As you can imagine, when every police officer has their camera on, or the squad car is also recording, it generates a lot of data. And so the question was, how do you know, and when there's a complaint, how do we get access to that information? And they showed me how when an officer comes in, they download it, and then it's held for a period. And if there is nothing if there is no reason to hold it, then eventually it gets erased. And therefore a complaint tags a particular incident, and all cameras related to that particular incident are then held in case they are needed for, a review for us or the chief or their supervisor. So it is a logistical problem. I would love to be able to say there is plenty of space. I would love to have it myself, but eventually cameras and hard drives get recycled. So there's logistical problems with it. On the other hand, for me, and maybe not in the ordinance of the 45 minutes, but if somebody needs to be heard, please put in a complaint. That refers then coming back to the suggestion by I believe Ms. Carr's to a survey. This suggestion has been on the table for a little bit. I've talked to Officer Searles, to Deputy Chief Searles, and I've talked to a couple of the other officers about that, and then researched a long time ago. There was more data kept. And another member of the public suggested, why don't we just have a small form survey all of the time so that every interaction with police gets a survey referenced. Right away, we talked about the anonymity of it, fear of reprisal. So we talked about what does it mean to then create a Google form or a SurveyMonkey, ways of collecting that information. So it's presently under discussion. It is not easy when there is limited hands to actually not just set up the system, but who reviews them and how are they incorporated. So I am all for taking in more information. We just have to figure out how do you intake it and how do you make use of it for productive conversations and summaries. So there's that. As far as I have to say, when somebody's victimized in any way, I've been mugged, I've suffered through that. And I've also had police, not in this town, but show up 45 minutes later and tell me that there's nothing to do, goodbye. It is a double victimization and it feels awful. And there is just, what could I have done? You start blaming yourself and all kinds of stuff. So I very much feel you, Ms. Nixon. The hard part and the harder part is having somebody to help us move through the process, especially when we're still in pain. And not only that's what friends are for, but I see ourselves as members of the public to help you, whoever needs, if filing a complaint is an obstacle. We talked about, not only have we changed the form, but we've talked about why don't we translate it? And then the suggestion has been made, so why don't we allow video complaints and then transcribe them so that they can go through the process. There's all kinds of language, but also literacy and trauma reasons why the process needs to be more open. And I think those are my comments as to what's been said so far. We'll go through then and take more comments from the public as we take notes from this. And we'll pause. Like I said, we're shooting for a time limit, but it'll depend very much on who's here. And we welcome actually of those that have commented as to our feedback, improve it, please. So next, Christopher Hansen is on the list and I see no other hands raised. Christopher.
Hi. So if I heard you, Ricardo, right, I think you might have just said that people could speak again. Is that what you?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, good.
You know,
I just, yeah.
Nobody should be here all night, but at the same time, this is our dialogue time. We don't have it. The formats always throw that out. So please.
Yeah, good. That also keeps people from having to feel like they have to think of every last point. So I'll just say a few things. And okay, so I guess on the issue of this event having been advertised, Carol Mitten said it got pretty wide play. That's just wrong. I mean, to post nothing on social media when the city, the mayor, and the police department every few hours posts all kinds of self-promotion, clearly they didn't try to promote this. I'm a member of the Urbana city news media contact list. The city didn't send this out to anyone. And it doesn't appear to have been sent out to anyone. So I just wanted to push back on that point. One thing you guys, I mean, the draft, the list that Ricardo showed earlier, the citizens petition, I helped co-author that. And it's been said a few times that you guys operate under an ordinance and you can't change the ordinance. Well, that's true, but there are things you can do, like you can march right up to the city council and speak any week and every week to tell them that you don't think the ordinance is working for this reason or that reason. You have that in your power, and I'm not aware that any of you have opted to do that. I mean, there's been very minimal attendance or not attendance, but speaking by the CPRB at city council meetings. So I'd encourage you to do that if you don't think the process is working. I don't think the process works. Mr. Allegretti said there's a spot open on the board and that there hasn't been any effort to evade a female representation, and maybe that's the case, but there have been 2 female applicants that have not been chosen. One of them, I think, was just completely skipped over, and I'm not sure what the status of the second one is. So one of my recommendations to this board is, what do you understand about what the mayor and the chief of police are doing to screen applicants to your board? I'm not aware of these applicants being bad choices. It seems to me like what city staff are doing is trying to deny applicants to this board because they don't want anyone on the board who might actually speak up and do something like say, this doesn't work, this is a problem. In regards to the time limits, that's a huge problem. And I'll remind the CPRB that I brought this to you a couple years ago in 2019, that you guys needed to eliminate the time limits. In fact, while Mr. Dossett was speaking about it, I pulled up an email from him on August 31st, 2019, where he says, quote, "I do not agree with eliminating time constraints. The windows in our ordinance are fine," end quote. They're not fine. They're not even close to fine. 45 days is ridiculous. When I'm done speaking, I hope Mr. Allegretti will talk about the statute of limitations that we have in Illinois for crimes. Do we have a statute of limitations on any crime that's 45 days? No. What do we have? They're usually years, and many of those crimes have statutes of limitations that have no limit whatsoever. Why is that the case? The reason we have so many crimes with very long statutes of limitations is because we understand that when someone is severely traumatized, they might not come around to reporting that crime for a very long time. And we're not talking about 45 days, or should it be 60 days or 90 days? We're talking about crimes like sexual assault, murder, sexual assault on underage children, issues like that. That's why we have no statute of limitations, because we know it's going to take a long time. And I know you guys kind of recognize the issue of trauma on someone who's been through something, but I don't think you really understand it, because when someone has been severely traumatized by something, they're not going to take your word for it. I mean, Mr. Diaz said, start the complaint process. They're not thinking anywhere in that zone for months or years before they've realized what's happened to them and that they're ready to speak up and file some kind of complaint. You should time limit.
Let's cycle back to you, if it's okay.
Okay.
We'll do the 5 minutes and then we can come back. So they want to talk.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. 2.3 points from that. We can come back to Jane, and then Sarah, and then Lance are on the queue. McLean, talk. Jane McLean.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks everybody for being here tonight and for all the input and thoughts. I will say, just to follow up on what Chris mentioned, I do know of another applicant, but I have also applied to the CPRB and interviewed, and I'm interested in helping if I can, but also would support somebody who had more direct experience, an impacted person if there was one. But I would be happy to lend my my voice and ideas and labor to this board if possible. I would also just like to, I've made, over the months, some recommendations for specific things, as many have. And, I know that the board has, in some cases, tried to move on those, and in some cases found some roadblocks in the way, in terms of just the way the ordinance is written or the way the police contract is written. But, as these things are always shifting and open to various changes, I would encourage the board to discuss being more open and more willing to make recommendations, which I think is part of the ordinance. But I think it would be helpful for the community and the council and city staff to hear from CPRB recommendations. For instance, when we were considering the revisions to the use of force policy a couple weeks ago, and like NAACP and the ACLU came out and made a statement and made some recommendations. I think it'd be helpful for CPRB to also act in that capacity, even just to maybe echo something that's come out of the community, or if you all are able to vote on recommendations to council, I think that's an important part of the board that is not going to be encumbered by so much logistical difficulty, which you might run into in making some of the changes to the ordinance and stuff. But that would still be, I think, really helpful to moving things along and helping to lead the city with a civilian perspective on these issues. Anyways, that's all I had. And thanks for hosting the listening session.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Sarah, and then we'll take a break for responses. You're next, Sarah.
Hello again, CPRB board. I just felt I might respond to some of the responses and comments that you made after I spoke. So I'm grateful for the opportunity for this back and forth, and this format is really great because it really allows us to feel that you are listening and that we are having a productive exchange. So thank you for that. I'll try to be brief. So trauma and the kind of situation that I find myself in, and I'm far from the only one, means that you feel scared for even speaking up at all. And I feel scared right now for having spoken tonight, even though rationally I should not feel scared. I can't help it. I feel scared, like it's a physical fear right now. But I'm going to speak again anyway, because you inspired me to do that. I want to thank you for the comments, which I thought were very sensitive and insightful on your part. The willingness to have another look at the language of trauma, I think Mr. Dossett put it, and another look at how the clock works. When does it stop? Can it stop in certain cases? And when you spoke about some complainants potentially being physically unable, you also sort of alluded to there can also be a psychological dimension or even cognitive impairment. You should be aware that trauma, one of the unfortunate consequences is that it can significantly sort of functionally impair a person's cognitive abilities. Situationally, it doesn't tend to be a permanent disability in that way, but when the person has to talk about the trauma, they tend to relive it. That's what happens to me, and that tends to impact and impair your ability to speak about it. And it also tends to impair your ability to retrieve facts or what happened. So your memory can get impacted too. And those of us who deal with this sort of trauma, it can be very embarrassing and shameful experience too. And so speaking for myself, I will often tend to do everything I can to cover it up so that nobody knows I'm feeling trauma. And I'll just talk about what happened and people won't know. Unfortunately, it does mean that I'll sometimes have to improvise and not remember stuff in the moment, which if I was being more authentic, I might be able to say, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the date that this happened or that happened. I do know it, but I can't remember it right now. I'm sort of getting off on a tangent and I apologize. I don't know if that's helpful or if that makes sense for you, but perhaps what about bringing on somebody to the board in a consultancy capacity who is a trauma-informed expert, a specialist who might be able to help with wording and even with conducting investigations and hearings? I think that might be something you might want to consider. That could be really beneficial. I want to just finally also say quickly, as someone who can offer the perspective of what trauma does to you, what it feels like, I want to echo and reinforce what Mr. Hansen said about you really may not actually be aware of what it feels like and again, how it can obstruct and impair. So here's a really important example. Trauma of this kind means that I can't even look at documents related to my case. I've FOIA'd my entire UPD record and I can't sit down and read it from beginning to end because I become overwhelmed with trauma, and I try and try. It might take me a year to read one document. So please think about that. And on that note, I want you to know that I will re-listen at some point to the recording of this evening's session. And then at some other point, I'll try to put into writing my, thoughts and recommendations beyond what I've been able to say that I hope you might find helpful, to take into account from the perspective of someone who has experienced, whose experiences with the Urbana Police Department have resulted in severe trauma. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Opportunity to comment back to the members of the board.
I'm fine, Ricardo.
Okay, thank you. I guess the part that just gets me, it's true. I mean, in everybody's experience, when something harsh comes down is just, I mean, it affects us all day, all night. We react differently at different times. I fully understand that. The point of the fine details of what o'clock and whatever else, they're up for. That's what this meeting is for. How do we accomplish the change and keeping evidence? I think is one. This I believe, as I read the ordinance, but even in the experience, this was not meant to be a court of law. The option for mediation is always there, but especially the option for suing, for taking this to court, whatever trauma was induced by a police force, that is still open to subject to the regulations that the state puts on it. We as a board are not allowed by this ordinance to handle cases that are being held by that are litigated, they're in court, they've been sued upon. I think it even says, I could look at the detail. So, even threat of. So we are limited. We don't have to be as limited. We just have to figure out whatever we propose is something that works. Right now we have a lot of cases to hear, and we will be working through them. There haven't been as many in 2021, but the invitation is still open. If you have had a problem or even a compliment to police officers, it should come in because we still need to deal with them. And as they are there, we still need to represent a fair hearing to both the complainant and for the police person or employee. We have a procedure, and today's discussion, I would want to make it even better. So I'm just saying that because we should do that. The next, everyone's correct. Our involvement with City Council has not been at the meetings. Some of it is putting thoughts in their ears and following up with members of council. Personally, I have done that and invited them to our meetings. And related to that, because of the mayor's position there, open right now as written, the mayor has the prerogative to choose who she puts on the boards. Right now, as they've said many times, they have all kinds of boards open. I don't know what the rules are for those other boards, but it makes sense that the top executive of government would have that prerogative. And sometimes we may not like it. I have been there, not only in these procedures, but in others. So that everybody knows, for the last 4 or 5 people on the board, certainly since before I was chair, maybe I was co-chair, I have been present in all but one of the interviews. Scott was present in one of the other ones. We make our recommendations to the mayor. The chief is usually there also, and he makes his recommendations to the mayor, but the mayor is the person that makes a final say. Just as we have final say as to whatever case complaint comes to us and appeal, she has final say on that. I don't mean to question her, but I have given my recommendations and will continue to do so as I am invited for these interviews, because as far as I can tell, she's not required to involve us in those interviews. She's friendly enough to invite us and to ask what our opinion is. So before I forget, out of this, one of the parts of the ordinance that I am unhappy about, that I want to put forward, and Scott and I, we started on this discussion. Right now, the ordinance excludes people with a felony to serve on the board, or if they have worked in the police, in law enforcement, now or before. Because of the kinds of things that we are dealing with as complaints, I don't believe that those voices should be excluded. And right now they are only channeled if there's a complainant or if there is an officer. And there have been many times in the room when we are having a hearing that I would want to hear the law enforcement end, not as part of the defense, if you will, of the board. And so it is one of the proposals that I want to put forward, and yes, that I would want to walk over to council with, because whatever the fights were and have been and maybe will be as far as excluding certain people, I just believe that this board ought to have any residents an opportunity. That we don't like that whatever the process is, then we should change it, propose it. It all goes through city council. So those are a couple of the comments that I make. Use of force is huge. They have had their own hearings, and there is a section, and yes, ACLU has made proposals, and we don't disagree with Carol, and just with them in general, communication is open and will be getting better as we approach what it is that they change. Lastly, I don't know, and somebody should inform us, police contract was in negotiation, which means the police department has to work out its rules as to how they deal with employees based, with the union. So the city's involved. I don't know how we could influence more than providing a voice like you have today as to some of the changes that we want, that you want, and that are, if you will, engraved, because that's the way it seems like with police unions across the country. So we need to keep on putting out our voice. And those are my responses thus far. We have one more speaker, and then I'm going to ask that anybody else who wants to speak, put yourself now, so that then we can close off this section of comments and call the meeting to an end, but leave the line open for further comments as we sort through them and try to push back. I do welcome, however it feels sometimes, I do welcome participation, and I know that gobs of hours that I'm not spending, you are spending looking through things and pointing them out. And I do appreciate that very much. And as we've discussed and with the board, that's how work gets done. It's through the back and forth of official bodies and citizen participation. So Christopher, you are next, and then we'll take it as I spelled out. And Emily after that. Go ahead.
Hello. So last I was speaking, we were talking about the time limits, and I'm very concerned with some of the things that the CPRB has said even just tonight. Body cameras are new. They're really pretty brand new. Body cameras have not been required in the past in order to make police complaints. They've not been required in the past in order for the police department to charge people with crimes. I understand exactly what's going to happen in Urbana is precisely what happened in Champaign, and the police department is going to make the argument that you should never allow a police complaint past the 90-day statutory body camera video requirement, because then they wouldn't be able to go look at the evidence. Well, that's complete bullshit. If the justice system can try people for crimes 25 years after the fact, no time limit after the fact, 10 years after the fact, whatever the statute of limitation is on that crime, then we have an understanding that it is possible to go back and look at the events of a situation many years or 20 years or 30 or 40 or 50 years after it happened and make a determination. If the justice system understands that when it comes to them charging people with crimes, then we should understand that when it comes to having oversight of the justice system, and that includes the police department. This isn't remotely confusing. The body camera footage thing is a complete red herring. We need to stop drinking the police Kool-Aid here and think about what makes sense. I started writing about police misconduct a little over 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I have gotten more police complaints myself in my personal capacity than I believe both the CPRB and Champaign's CRS combined. Why is that the case? Why do people come with me and say, hey, I saw this situation that, police were roughing up this guy over at this intersection, they should look into it. Why do they come to me and not to you? It's because they don't trust you to do anything meaningful. And they look at me and say, well, at least maybe he could write a story about it or something. So I just had one a week or two ago. Someone contacted me on Facebook and said, hey, this happened at this intersection and my friend and I saw this. You should really look into it. And I asked them, are they willing to submit a police complaint? And the answer was no. They don't trust this process. They're afraid to go through it. They're afraid of retaliation. So, and they still didn't come to one of you. They came to me. So I'm gonna submit a complaint for that event, and I'm gonna get the video, and it'll probably all get denied, and we'll see what happens. And I'm gonna go through the process and submit a complaint because I know this person was concerned about what happened, and I'm gonna watch your board deny it, if only to document that the city and this board doesn't really care about these events. In regard to the appointment process, Mr. Diaz said, that the top executive, referring to the mayor, should have that prerogative. No, that's not right. There's no indication anywhere in good governance that the top executive needs to appoint all 150 board members of a city's boards and commissions. I don't know where you got the idea that that's the right way to do it. I know that's how we do it in Urbana, but it's wrong. And believe me, the upcoming cohort of new city council members are going to change that. Ricardo also said the mayor is not required to involve us, referring to the CPRB. It may not be written into ordinance, but she damn well is required to involve you. If any number of you went to a city council meeting, do it next week, and you said, this thing in our ordinance or this thing that the mayor is doing is encouraging police misconduct, you will see it changed very quickly. None of you are willing to do that as far as I can tell. She's required to listen to you. It may not be written in ordinance, but she's damn well required to listen to you. In fact, you have that right at a city council meeting to speak. And as far as the excluding board members who have felony convictions, that's a violation of our human rights ordinance. In fact, I'm going to submit a human rights complaint about that right now. I've actually already been drafting it, and we're going to see what happens with that. I predict city staff are going to deny it because that's how we do things in Urbana, but we'll see what happens. Thanks.
Thank you for your contribution. It is true that some things are not as easy to do, but we should be willing to minimum consider them, and that's what this session is about. Emily Close, you'll be our last contributor tonight.
Hello, good evening. My name is Emily Close. I live in Champaign. First of all, I just wanted to state that I had my hand up for the first session and I didn't get called on. So anyway, I'm really disappointed that there's not a quorum tonight. It looks bad. It's embarrassing, it's disheartening. And I thought that having these monthly meetings would mean there'd be a quorum once a month. But anyway, I do agree, second, with Mr. Hanson and Ms. Nixon that this listening session was poorly advertised and promoted. I'm familiar with your badly designed website, and it's putting something vague like listening session does not inspire confidence and doesn't get the people that you want to hear, which is not me and Chris Hansen and Tracy Chong week after week after week. I think there's other people that want to speak. They just don't know about it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 45-day limitation. I think part of the problem is that the public's not informed and they're not educated that they can write a FOIA and request the body cam video and the squad car video from the interaction with the police officer. Most people I talk to don't know what a FOIA is, a Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah.
Don't know how to write one. They don't know that you don't have to give a reason or an explanation of why you want the material. It's your right under statute to ask for that. And it includes all records, not just, anything that's written, not just a police report, but you can ask for the electronic, the video, and they'll send you a disc or they'll send it to you and you can, they'll send it to you as an attachment or whatever. So, and the second thing is about the 45-day limit. To me, it makes sense to have a shorter time limit, because if you want that body cam video or you want the squad car video of that interaction that you had with a police officer, you want to ask for it before it rolls off the server. There's thousands of hours of body cam video, and they don't have room to store it. I mean, that's just a fact. And you have to ask for it before it's lost. And so my concern about filing a complaint, say 2 years down the road, when you've maybe gotten your trauma under control, is that that video is going to be long gone. And especially if they pass this, the governor signs this state law, then all police officers will be required to wear body cameras. And where are they going to put all that footage? Someone's going to have to, categorize it and store it. So I myself am not in favor of having just no time limit. And I think it serves the public to have some kind of a restriction on, but you have to have the education to tell people that they have to request it. And the city's not in the job of advocacy. So it breaks my heart when I listen to Sarah Nixon speak, because there's no one at the city that will advocate for you. You have to be your own advocate, and you have to know how the system works. And I guess I just want to go back to the point that part of your mandate, I think, is to inform the public or help educate them. Like, what is a complaint and how do you file a complaint and what materials do you need to file a complaint? So that's my comment about if you're looking to make any changes in the ordinance, just the education part. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I had said that we would do that as the last segment and for the board to comment on it. We have had 2 other requests, one from Lance Pittman and one from Evelyn Underwood. I want to come back to them, but first do as we said. Board members, comments on what was said by the last 2 people?
Ricardo, I'll comment. I like what I'm hearing, I guess, regarding the fear of retaliation, in the respect that it seems like it's a barrier, or maybe a barrier that the ordinance has in submitting a complaint, which is, this board has had numerous conversations about the firsthand account. And I think anyone who's been a regular attendee of this board's meetings has seen, that there are limitations to that, and that those could potentially be changed. The 45-day limitation in the ordinance, it's working days, so it is 8 weeks. I'm not saying that that's long enough, but if we discuss doubling that to, just to throw out a number, I mean, will that suffice? I'd have to ask maybe Scott to tell me, or if we can look back on what have there been denials of complaints for lack of, by running limitation, not the statute of limitation, but the ordinance limitation. I don't know if that's a persistent problem. It seems like the problem more likely would be filing it after, for some longer period of time based on the fact that it's a traumatic event or people don't want to be fear of reprisal. I completely understand that. I think this board is, at least some of the members on the board, myself included, have tried to expand, the meaning of a person being able to file it. As far as the, I liked Ms. Close's comment about, putting together a how to file a complaint. I think that's a great suggestion for us to do. Just walk someone through how to do it. Someone not even knowing what FOIA means, that it's even an acronym. It rolls off my tongue because I know what it means. But if you told someone on FOIA something, they may look at you cross-eyed. What are you talking about? Some of these terms that, we know, take for granted. But I think the walkthrough that's a great suggestion. I think abolishing the limit on filing the complaint, I think there are issues with that. Mr. Hansen spoke to that there are some crimes in Illinois that don't have a statute of limitations that, there are issues with that. That's a double-edged sword, allowing a case to be filed so far out in advance or out after the date of the incident. That can really hamstring the person on the receiving end of that complaint, even for very serious crimes, or especially for serious crimes like that. So, if we're going to remove those limits, someone just complaining about an incident that took place years ago, regarding an incident with a police officer, outside of that person complaining and having their word and an explanation from the police without any other physical evidence, I don't know what the CPRB would do with that. That may be a difficult case to deal with so far out. But I think that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Scott?
I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to what I've heard, what Tony has said.
Okay.
Certainly, you can point out the different opinions by the group of people who've presented tonight, the public commenting about the whole thing about the limit period. What I can say after, reviewing, 10 years or so of our data is it's very infrequent. And the ones that, in other words, the ones that exceed the 45-day limit. Now, of course, we don't have any way of knowing whether a complaint would have been filed if the window were larger. So, in other words, how many people gave up, which is why my instinct is to follow Ricardo's suggestion that if you think you have a complainable issue, go ahead and do it and put that in process, and then you get that started. But my read of the data, and this will be some of the narrative, hopefully, that will generate for this kind of compendium report. And if you want to look back at the reports from 11, 12, and 13, it's onesie twosies in terms of the number of complaints that are specifically unfounded because they were not received within 45 days. And moreover, from the numbers that, we've got looking at 13 to 19, turnaround is pretty fast. So I think, internally, UPD is processing them pretty efficiently for the most part. I'm not willing to speak about 2020 because it's a little bit of an aberrant in the system, and there'll be a lot more work that needs to be done to explain the system and ourselves for that calendar year. But we don't have a problem. In some cases, complaints kind of spread out. So someone might see a pattern. The one I'm thinking of, I think I can say without any confidentiality issues. You know, someone sees a car go by and they get a little bit sensitive, and then the car goes by again and again and again and again, and they sort of start, you know, feeling like they've been harassed by the number of times a car goes by. And, you know, the board accepted complaints. I can't remember which calendar year this was, but I'll guess 16 or 17 that were actually filed with the date of the offense being, you know, from February to June. We accepted that packet of complaints and it was processed, and you know, the citizen was given the satisfaction that they could get. So anyway, that's what I have to say about time limits right now.
Thank you. You've also brought up something that triggers something that somebody mentioned early on in their comments. Well, we don't handle things that are in court, and I've actually encouraged in a way to say if it's been a while and it's a crime, file it in regular court. I did, oh, I triggered it and I'm forgetting it. Listening session. I guess my only comment has to do with, yes, great on education to the public. We need to move forward more on that. Yes, I didn't even know what a FOIA was until late in my adult life. And to tailgate that, when we look at a case on appeal, I mean, yes, when the complaint is there, the video and the evidence gets tagged and has to be uploaded to our portal as this is what exists. And it says all evidence related. We get to see it. And it's been hard to get 4 or 5 points of views of a particular case in reports and in video. It's true the cameras for the officers are only a couple of years old. We had the taser ones, and before that it was just written reports. When it gets to us, we'd like to have as much information as possible, and it's required that we get it. And sometimes some of that information is not available to the complainant. And certainly our discussion is not available to the complainant or to the police, but they come in and they present their case, their point of view as to what happened and what it is. We are not, there it is, the first question of who imposes discipline. We are not there. We don't have that power. We do have subpoena power, I think, according to the ordinance in circumstances. But when it really comes down to making the officer pay for a particular situation, after we hear a case, we can put it out and we can recommend to the chief as to where we disagree that not enough discipline was put forward. It still goes right now, at least right now, it goes back to the chief. It is something that we could propose, and we have to word it and whatever else. I don't have hesitancy in proposing. When I go to battles, I want to win because it should be reasonable what I'm putting forward. So whatever we propose, I want to make sure that we have a good case and that we're going to see it through. Or there's another reason for putting it through. Sometimes just to open the door. But in any case, those situations have to be thought out, and we put them out. I very much believe that most things can be changed through dialogue, through prodding and educating each other, not only as individuals, but in the system too. And then you go to the hard ball when there is no other, and then we take it by votes. So I encourage everyone, as things are put before City Council, that you mobilize yourselves so that the votes for the changes of the ordinance come because the people wanted it, not just because we proposed it. The City Council is elected, and we have that prerogative ourselves. And we are part of the process. It's just that we're not the final word on those processes. I think those are the ones I wanted to comment on. I certainly agree with the fear of retaliation, and we have to come up with a better process of that. It is, the last time I was mugged, I only put it in to complain the whole thing just because out of principle. I actually hoped that somebody would read it, but it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I sat and I did it and nothing happened. It was not in this town, but it was very frustrating to think that no one was going to see it or call me, and they never called me back, and that nobody was ever caught, whatever. Sadly, it does happen. It has happened to me too. So we do have a target to finish. We have had Dr. Evelyn Underwood on the list, and we lost Lance. I want to, since she hasn't spoken tonight, I want to give her a chance to speak, but I won't invite time to respond necessarily, but we will hear and keep it on record. So Dr. Underwood, your hand is raised. Would you like to comment? And while you get there, it looks like you're unmuted now. I understand how hard it is to listen to long meetings and know when it's your turn. I have at times watched city council and only paid attention to the parts that most interest me. So we're just regular people. Ms. Underwood? Okay, yeah, she might have lost interest. For time, I am open now to continuing then to close this and go on to the section of announcements. These are not, most of them are not new, but we'd like to put forward again to make sure that we know and we all prepare. Yes, promotion is always an issue and we need to make it wider, but the more we put it on as regular, then the more time there is. There continues to be one CPRB vacancy. There has been at least one person interviewed and there's no decision yet. So until, and we should always have a queue of people. So please, anyone that you know that might, even if we fill it up in the next week, I must say I got texts from the other board members. One had excused and the other one is sick. And so we lost at least 2 members with very reportable reasons. So thank you for that announcement. B, recruitment of the HREO. I think that's Carol's. If you're still listening.
We are developing a short list. We should be interviewing folks pretty soon.
Okay, thank you. So it closed and you guys have gone through the first cut then, and now you're interviewing.
Yes, although until we hire somebody, if anybody's still interested, we'd welcome any other applicants.
Okay, good. Thank you. That person then is the person that will receive human relations complaints, and the CPRB is that our staff support too, or not?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. CPRB appeals hearings. We have narrowed down dates in which the resources align. That is, enough board members were open. There was city space and there was city staff to be there. We are announcing them so that we all know that they're there. Like I said, we normally go into closed session and all the other requirements for the appellants are being followed. So that's the announcement. And then our next regular meeting on February 24th, coming up next month. That'll be our regular monthly meeting, which will continue topics such as today. And I believe somebody put on the agenda to come back to the tasers, both the usages and then discussions about them. So be ready for that. That's the announcements. Not as required, but just as our practice, we have normally had public participation. At this point, we normally don't have. I mean,
Hey, Ricardo, can I break in real quick?
Go ahead.
just to give credit where credit's due, because there are a lot of balls in the air that make letter C possible. In addition to those people in the room that you mentioned, we also have a lawyer who acts as a kind of a hearing officer for us that has presented all of these appeals. They don't really question. They should really be helping us with process. And so I really appreciate all the time that Carol and other staff have to put in trying to get this herd to herd the cats into one room to make a hearing happen. So appreciate it.
Thank you. It is true. And all the countless of hours of volunteer time is hereby recognized but appreciated without any formality. Just thank you. So we're done with announcements. We're go to public participation. We have had a lot of public participation. We do have one person asking, and we'll have them, and then we will be done with the meeting. Christopher Hansen.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
Christopher. I'll make it short. So one thing that we see in common between the CPRB and the Champaign's CRS, which is your sister group over in Champaign, is essentially no matter what any police officer or staff member does to obstruct the police complaint process, we see the members of these boards complimenting and cheering the actions of city staff. And that's part of the thing that's making it so that none of the residents who might submit complaints trust any of you, because you just don't recognize misconduct. Mr. Dossett just commended Carol Mitten. Well, she's tried to violate the CPRB ordinance multiple times. She's tried multiple times to put obstructions in front of the process, in front of people who submit complaints. She's administratively denied multiple complaints. What an awful person to commend in this process, but the one person who continues to put roadblocks in front of it. And she makes like what, 140, 150K a year. She's the highest paid person in the city of Urbana. She's not doing this out of any sense of volunteering her time or anything. She's doing this because she gets paid a lot of money to be a professional obstructionist. And you guys can continue to go down this path of commending staff who are obstructionists to the process, but every time you do that, you lose trust of the residents who you are meant to be providing oversight for. So I just don't get it. Now you know exactly what that mechanism looks like. I know you're not going to listen to me because you usually don't listen, and you haven't in the past. But that's what that looks like from the citizen's perspective. And that's why people come to me with police complaints instead of going to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hansen, for your comments. And I do commend you for being here and for doing, people do call me actually for complaints, and I encourage them to formally complain. There was one that I almost convinced, and he said, no, I'll just leave it alone. I just wanted you to know. In the end, it wasn't trauma. It was a matter of time. So I'm aware of some of that, but it doesn't hurt to compliment on the things that people do well. And I will continue to compliment both city and residents for being part of the process and doing as much as they can. So thank you, everyone. I think we have to close by motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much. And we have a vote. Tamara, please.
Tony Allegretti,
Yes.
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes.
Scott Dossett.
Yes.
Thank you. We will be meeting then in a month, except for the hearings coming up as far as a group gathering time. But we encourage you to keep on sending comments. Our emails are public, and some of you have used them, but anybody else listening in the recording is also welcome to send us comments. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone.